Hello and welcome. If you're watching this, chances are you did not come upon this by accident. Chances are you were looking for something from Greece literatura, or if en français, that would be Gris literatura. What is that? Well, I would hope you would know if you've come upon this, but Gris literatura is a nonprofit organization dedicated to engendering greater participation in poetry among all peoples, and opening up the possibility of poetry within us all through readings, open mics, and workshops. We are located in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota area, and have focused primarily on that. But now that we are all in this virtual reality, we can reach out to anybody, anywhere, and they can reach out to us and we can respond. So that is a fantastic thing in that regard. Let me set the scene here. That said, it is now, because we're hoping to post this on YouTube, you can watch this at your leisure anytime, but it is now, right now, where I am, mid-May 2020, and the world is gripped by COVID-19 fever. And yes, I realize that's gallows humor, or even possibly worse than gallows humor, because it's a gallows pun. Anyway, flashback to March of the same year, and we, myself, our Grease Literatura, we're preparing to host our regular monthly reading and open mic at Prodigal Pub, located at 26th Street and 1st Avenue in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Post lockdown, they will still be open, so you definitely should go there. Fantastic Celtic pub with delicious homemade, home-baked food, owned by one family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can go on and on about it. I can go on and on about a lot of things. And we were going to have Robert Roddy read along with Nathan Bergstad, and as it turned out, as luck would have it, our reading was going to be on St. Patrick's Day, when it would fall, Tuesday, 17th. And as it was, Robert, who hails from Northern Ireland, was set to read from a whole host, well, three incredible Irish poets, W.B. Yeats, Seamus, Heaney, and Gavin Boland. I think did I get that right?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Wasn't sure about the first name of the last one. Well, as fate would have it, thus alluding to the possibility that fate and luck are different things, you can discuss. And then let me know, because I don't know. As fate would have it, that was the very day that the lockdown started for our fair state of Minnesota. Order came down, and hence we had no reading. Since that time, Grease Literatura, have been doing quite a bit of stuff online, workshops and classes and such. But Robert and I discussed the possibility of figuring out another way to do this reading because we really wanted to have this done. And kind of figured out that what we really wanted to do was a bit deeper dive into than what a reading would generally afford us to discuss. The works of Yeats and Heaney and such. So we've decided to do that. For this right now, this is that. We're going to do a deep dive and discussion on works that Robert has chosen to read. It's a little different than what he had chosen to read before, and we'll probably discuss that as well. Let me just introduce you. Robert Roddy was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and grew up there during what is colloquially known as the Troubles, a sectarian war which was endured for 30 years. He moved to St. Paul in 1986 and has practiced psychiatry there ever since. He has a keen interest in Irish poetry and is looking forward to reading selections of poems from Yeats and Seamus Heaney this evening. And I will now turn it over to Robert Roddy.
Thanks, David, and thanks for organizing and arranging this and facilitating something I like to do, which is to read and share Irish poetry. As you said, we were planning on doing a celebration of Irish poetry for St. Patrick's Day, and a virus circumvented that possibility. So for the last 8 weeks, like everybody else, we've been in somewhat of a lockdown. And the world is facing a crisis. So I thought it might be an opportunity to share some of the contemplations of two great Irish poets, probably the two greatest Irish poets of the 20th century during times of crisis, and their reflections on it. One of the best known poems I'll start with is Yeats's Second Coming. The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reels shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born? So, David, did you have any questions or comments on?
Well, I think what we should do, we had discussed reading several poems and then discussing. So I think originally,
Okay, let's do it.
Yep.
Okay. The second poem is a Seamus Heaney poem. And it's a poem selected from Wintering Out, which we can talk a little bit about. The poem is called Augury, and it's a prescient poem written in 1972 about the coming troubles. Augury. The fish faced into the current, its mouth agape, its whole head opened like a valve. You said, it's diseased. A pale crusted sore turned like a coin and wound to the bottom, unsettling silt off a weed. We hang charmed on the trembling catwalk. What can fend us now can soothe the hurt eye of the sun, unpoison great lakes, turn back the rat on the road.
Well, certainly the Second Coming is quite a famous poem, especially that in there, what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. But you follow this up with Augury, and for you, is there like a link in the symbolism or the imagery between those two? Why those two to begin?
Okay. Both these poems are written at times of crisis. The Second Coming was first printed in 1919, and it was written just after the First World War. It was written after the Easter Rising in Ireland and the coming War of Independence. It was written also during the Spanish flu, which was the last great pandemic. Yeats's wife at that time was recuperating from the Spanish flu. She was pregnant at the time, and at the time, 70% of women who were pregnant didn't survive. So it was written at a time of world crisis. Augury was written in 1972. Seamus Heaney had been forced to leave his home in Northern Ireland and take refuge in the south of Ireland. It was the worst time of the Northern Ireland Troubles. We'd had Bloody Sunday, where the army had turned their guns on unarmed civilians, and Black Friday, where a series of civilians were blown up. So it was a very dark time. So both these poems are written at dark times, and both poems speak not particularly to the specifics of those troubles, but the general condition of man, and to some extent in Yeats's poem, the general condition of the universe, and man's relationship with his own nature, how the soul, within the soul, the spirit and the nature have become separated. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. And in Heaney's poem, um, man's mistreatment of the earth. Heaney was a farmer, born, and father was a farmer. Held a small holding, and so their relationship with the land was central to their existence. And by this time, he had travelled and he had witnessed the global pollution. The poem's prescient about global warming, and it's also prescient in its last line about the coming of a plague if we don't take better care of the planet. So these two poems have a certain prescience to them. Yeats's poem also speaks to Yeats and his wife. And at that time were deeply involved and committed to a work he was doing, which was eventually published as The Vision, A Vision, which is an astrological, philosophical work where he focuses on aeons. The aeons were periods of time which really coincide with astrological signs and what's called the precession of the equinoxes, which I won't go into details of, but they're periods of 2,000 years. And the 2,000 years from about the birth of Christ until the present time was known as the Piscean age. And as you probably remember from what became popular in the 60s and 70s, people began to think we were moving into the age of Aquarius. And Aquarius is the age of the sign of Aquarius is the human, and its opposite sign is Leo, the lion.
Right.
So what Yeats is sort of obliquely referring to here is we're entering into the age of Aquarius, and there's a new spirit about to assume command and centrality, taking over from the Christian era, from Christ the fisherman, the Piscean age, and moving into this new era. And what is it going to bring? He's seen the signs of the agitation, the signs of this new time coming. And the book, A Vision, he was writing was about how, as one era came to its expansion, another era was, and its finale, another era was seated. That's what the gyres were. And so the Piscean age has come to its completion. You've gone from Christian to the antithesis of Christianity with this mass slaughtering of man in the Second World War, and locally in Ireland with rebellion. And what's going to replace this? His image is of something quite dark. Heaney, in his poem, is somewhat more consoling. The title of the book that poem was published in was called Wintering Out, and Wintering Out became, at the beginning of the COVID crisis, some of his comments on the title. He was interviewed on the title, Wintering Out, and what he said about it, he was asked about the dark times, and he said, if we winter this one out, we can summer anywhere. And
seems very appropriate for now.
that has become a catchphrase in Ireland. It's posted all over the place. From an old farming custom of putting the cattle out to pasture. And what he said about the title is, no spring was being promised, but I still didn't think of the title as despairing. Beasts standing under a hedge, plastered and wet, looking at you with big patient eyes, just taking what came till something else came along. It is meant to be, I suppose, comfortless enough, but with a notion of survival in it. And the sick fish in the poem, Augury, speaks to the sick soul of man at the time. The fish being a symbol for the soul. And what he's saying at the end of that poem is, man, if they do the right thing, can fend off what's coming. If they can begin to take better care of the planet, some of these problems, which...
Well, there's the whole rat on the road going back to, I mean, the historical memory
of the plague.
Of the Black Plague, even.
Of the plagues, yeah. That's what's recalled in the last line. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, kind of... It's interesting to me that the Second Coming has such a sense of like, it's such a I get almost a sense of like a gathering of huge dark clouds on the horizon hurrying towards us. Okay. That, I mean, again, the end, what rough beast slouches towards Bethlehem, you know, and already there's the sense of like a biblical sense about it, about possibly the beast in Revelations, the beast in the apocalypse. And then in Heaney's, it's such a small focus. And, you know, we're talking about a fish, a dead fish. And even if you want to, when you go to like the larger memory, it's just to a rat in the road. I found that kind of fascinating between the two. Even with wintering out again, it's Heaney's focus is such on so minute. You know, he's looking at a cow's eye, the eye of the cow, basic cow. I wonder if that might be part of, maybe that's part of the modernist inheritance, you know, William Carlos Williams focusing on a red wheelbarrow, you know, as opposed to, and what was that written, like 1930s or something, I think. And as opposed to, I mean, Yeats to me always feels like there is always a larger thing going on. I don't know if you have that feeling about it as well, or...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think there's I think Heaney starts us with the particular, and you know, he takes us to a fish, you know, a single soul, a troubled soul, and he generalizes it. That so far, what he said in the poem is, so far we've been lucky.
Mm.
but we're hanging from a trembling catwalk. In other words, we can see what's happening. It's
Right. We hang charmed.
yeah, it's shaky, but we need to do something. Um, it's and he's still optimistic that there are things that we can do that may alter the course of our destiny. Yeats is more at that time accepting that destiny is going to do what destiny is going to do, whether we like it or not. When
They're a little more fatalistic almost.
it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. There isn't the same notion of survival. Yeats doesn't give you the same notion of survival that Heaney gives for Yeats. It's not
Right. Because
just
he ends with like, turn back the rat on the road. That there's a possibility.
we can still do it. It's
Yes.
like that certainly in that poem, and that poem is written to the people in Northern Ireland at the time. And I think Heaney had, in truth, already accepted that the people in Northern Ireland were in for a marathon struggle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think he had a certain sense of abandonment, of having to leave. I think he was very torn over it for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
He had to get out to keep himself and his family safe, raise them outside of that atmosphere of madness.
Mm-hmm. Now, where was I don't mean to go on just about these two poems because we have a lot other, but where was Ireland at this time as of the Second Coming? And again, thinking of what's most immediate to us, that background of recovery from the Spanish flu, the 1918 influenza. Where was Ireland in its struggles at that point?
Well, in 1916, there had been a rebellion at Easter in Dublin,
Mm-hmm.
which was inspired in a lot of ways by poets and by poetic ideologies. And it was David against Goliath
Yeah.
affair. It was never going to succeed militarily. It was a sacrifice. It was an Easter sacrifice. And after the rebellion, the rebels were executed, and that brought outcry about the mercilessness of the British Empire, which facilitated negotiations between Britain and Ireland for the beginning of independence. So it was the start of the independent movement, but things weren't settled in Ireland at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was arguments and fights internally between different parties as to what terms should be accepted for settlement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't peaceful.
All right. Wow, that was a lot to get. It's very interesting too that so both of these poems, the crises that would be fair to say that the crises that both of the authors, Yeats and Heaney, wrote these of were primarily of a political, social, and possibly military bend.
At one level, I think also the other level is that both of them are reflecting on the crisis of the soul of man. I think that's, I think the sick fish represents a sick soul, and I think the falcon and falconer becoming separated and no longer in communication, is
Oh,
nature,
right.
nature
Yeah.
and spirit no longer being connected. So I think both these poems start out um, with the same diagnosis of the human condition.